PNC, America's Black News Channel. Watch us on all major cable providers and major streaming platforms. Finally, news that speaks to us.
Joining me now is Jessica Post, the president of the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee. She is here to tell us exactly what her organization is doing to gain and keep momentum on the state level. Jessica, I'm really excited to have you here because I am a total state politics nerd. So much of my political work has been trying to shift state legislatures and diversify them because, frankly, as people who care about progressive and liberal ideas as I do and, civil rights, we get creamed at the state level. Just look at Texas and Florida and how they are wilding out right now with their crazy policies that are trying to suppress most of us. So I want to start off by talking about some of your accomplishments and what you guys are up to. You've raised $51 million. You've secured 8 legislative majorities, and you flipped about 100 seats. Talk to us, though, about the real state of play of where we are with state legislatures all across the country and what needs to happen with regards to the ground game to continue to make progress.
Well, first, Aisha, thank you so much for having me. It's so great to join you on the show. I would say, look, we've been running uphill at the state legislative level, as you know, for many years. In 2010, as Democrats, we dropped the ball. We didn't focus enough on winning state legislatures. And then the Republicans gerrymandered themselves into near permanent majority in the U.S. House of Congress. So we definitely have seen just really a challenge at the state legislative level. We are doing everything we can to fight and equalize at the state legislative level to make sure that we can do things like back up Roe v. Wade in the states, to make sure that we can expand voting rights. There's just a tale of really 2 countries. In states where we have Democratic majorities across the country, we are expanding voting rights. We are expanding paid sick leave, just like you said a little bit earlier. And then in the Republican states, they're passing these infamously terrible laws, whether it's Florida's Don't Say Gay bill or whether it's the just rejection of ballots in Texas, which is just another version of this Jim Crow 2.0 that we've seen in Georgia that's traveling across the country.
And don't even get me started on the attacks on abortion and these, kind of creating a vigilante state where citizens can go after each other. I mean, this is all just completely crazy. And even in places, this is so important, y'all, for us to keep talking about here, because even in places like Georgia, where we may get excited about the statewide races, where you have a Stacey Abrams on the ballot again, who's running for governor, or you have 2 Democratic senators from Georgia making history, having helped to flip that state blue, you still have a state legislature that is controlled by Republicans, which is why you still have so many oppressive laws that are happening there. So, I would love for you to talk to us about your ground game in particular, with being able to find candidates to run for state leg seats so that we have people in place that can help create a fair and equitable districting process. For example, we know that the approach, has to be multi-pronged, but talk to us about that pipelining and what all goes into this work.
Absolutely. At DLCC, we know that diversity is a winning strategy for us in terms of all of the state legislative chambers that we've picked up and making the best public policy. That happens when diverse candidates, gender diverse, and people of color serve in state legislatures. In the Democratic Party, 40% of our state legislators are people of color, whereas Republicans only have 2%. And one of the things that we've been trying to do across the country at DLCC is make sure that we're recruiting candidates that really reflect their communities, using what's been called reflective democracy to make sure that we're getting the best candidates. And when you get candidates from that really truly represent communities, that leads to voter turnout, that leads to, like I said, better representation. And it's really a way to win all across the country. We started this, I think, in Virginia in 2019 and really in 2017, where we saw diverse candidates running, and we're continuing it into 2022. Now, you're completely right. It is in Georgia, we're running uphill. The Republicans have effectively gerrymandered the districts in Georgia. In addition to that, they're doing everything they can to prevent people from voting. We saw that with Stacey Abrams' race, the former Georgia minority leader, former DLCC board member Stacey Abrams. We couldn't be more proud. And we'll continue to see it, I'm sure, in the 2022 election cycle. So we're making strategic investments to make sure there are folks out there recruiting strong candidates, and to make sure that when those candidates come home for their full-time job, which many of them have, that they're able to go out and knock doors. That was something we didn't do as much as we should have in 2020 because of the pandemic, and we won't make that mistake again. We think that candidate door knocking is really the most persuasive thing that we can do out there.
Yeah, all politics are local, and I'm so glad that you guys are focused on what you're calling, reflective democracy, but really getting people from communities to actually run to represent their communities, because that's so much of the challenge is often a disconnect between the leadership and the people that they're supposed to be serving, because they're not actually doing the work of the people. Talk to us about how this then bubbles up, because when you're electing leaders at that state level, ultimately they're then poised to continue on into other offices, and we see a real pipeline go through to Congress and otherwise. Is that something that you are focused on as you're recruiting for the states, or are you just focused on the work of the states?
We're definitely focused on creating great leaders across the country. One of the things I think people may not know is the number of people of color that lead state legislative chambers. Our chairwoman, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, was the first Black woman to lead a state legislative body in New York. And that's led to some incredible public policy outcomes in that state, including expanding voting rights, protecting Roe, fully funding schools for the first time. So yeah, it's a huge focus. We have to think about who we're putting on the ballot. And then we've had so many success stories. I referenced former Georgia House Minority Leader Stacey Abrams, who served on a board, who ran up ticket. We also have Aaron Ford out in Nevada, the Attorney General, and so many others that have continued to serve a ballot. And if you think about folks like Pramila Jayapal and other folks around the country, they have done everything they can. So what we have to do this cycle now is defend our Democratic incumbents and make sure that we are sending back those great leaders that have delivered great policies in what might be a challenging electoral environment. We don't really know, but we do know that midterm elections usually spell trouble for the president's party, and we're prepared to defend all of the gains that we've made since 2016.
I have less than a minute left, but could you give us a sense of some key states that we should be paying attention to, where maybe we have an opportunity to make some headway in those chambers or even flip them?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a few really great opportunities. In Michigan, an independent redistricting commission was put forward by the voters, and now we have independent maps in Michigan for the first time in 40 years in the state Senate. So we in Michigan used to win the vote statewide, the popular vote, but in something that probably is familiar to your viewers, we would lose majorities in the legislature because these districts were so gerrymandered. Oh. Now we have an opportunity. Yeah,
okay,
it's similar to the
yeah,
it's like an electoral college, right?
Jessica,
in the States.
Jessica, I have to run. We're running out of time, but I want to have you back to talk more about Michigan and the implications there, certainly for the midterms, but for the presidential as well. Jessica Post, president of the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, thank you so much for joining me on Amplified. Appreciate your time.